true indeed with you, Holy Circle Gaming. Thank you for rocking with your boy like always. Definitely a privilege and an honor to do as such. Y'all see what we doing it. We doing it living room status today because I'm actually going to sit down. Not going to really do any gameplay in this instance, but I am going to go over a topic. I was chopping it up with my boys, got a lot of different feedback, some from my own crew, the Holy Circle Gaming, some from my work crew, some from friends that I know, and I kind of just came up with a big old compilation of this particular topic right here. I asked my boys, what is your personal top 5 games of all time? Now, this is not one of those lists to say is, what's the top 5 games of all time? Like, this is the top 5. What is your personal top 5? And I didn't put no limitations on how I asked them about their top 5. I didn't say it had to be on just a PlayStation or just an Xbox or just a PC. I gave them all reigns in the world. What is your personal top 5? What are the 5 games that you would say is, I will be able to play this game over and over and over again until the day that you die or until the day that you say I'm not going to be a gamer anymore. So what is that top 5? What is that top 5 to you? And so that's going to be the breakdown. And in that compilation of asking that question, it was crazy because it spurned a very good topic. I mean, I was powwowing with the boys and we were chopping it up and we couldn't even get back to work simply because the topic was so heavy and everybody had their thoughts and opinions about top 5s. And, I had a lot of people switching like which titles they wanted to be in their top 5 because they really had to sit down and lock in and think about it and really make a case for their personal top 5. And guess what? Even in that process of conversation, I really didn't dip too far into my top 5. So I'm definitely going to give that to people as well. Because in the topic of conversation, I only gave them maybe 1 or maybe 2 of the games that I personally put in my personal top 5, where they were giving me their top 5. So it was a very, very good topic of conversation. So I definitely want to get into it. And so the first and foremost thing that I will present to you, people on the YouTube stream and whatnot, and people who will be able to see this later on down the line is, what is your personal top 5? Your personal top 5. What are the top 5 games that you will sit down and play over and over again? Is it an old school game? Is it a new school game? Is it a sports game? Is it an RPG? Is it all Nintendo, or is it all arcade, or is it old school PC or whatnot, even if it's Neo Geo? And in compiling the data, I'll tell you some of the data and some of the facts that I got in this process. Here's some of the data that went along. 1, most people's top 5 features some sort of action adventure game. That's off top. Had some sort of action adventure game into it. Here's another thing that kind of struck me. A lot of people feature games that are, most of them aren't in the top 5 of what people would deem like Metacritic or IGN or GameSpot or some of the other ones that they would deem in their particular top 5. They don't even fall nowhere near those categories. A few people did. A few people actually had games that actually hit those top 5, but a lot of people didn't. So the games that are the top selling games of all time didn't always hit the top 5 of personal faves. It was actually those in-between games, maybe some that kind of hit maybe the top 50 or the top 100 actually hit those. That was an interesting topic, to understand that a lot of the games that are like the top selling games of all time wasn't in people's personal top 5. That's not to say they didn't play it. That's not to say that they didn't enjoy it. All that means is it wasn't in their personal top 5. Here's another thing that kind of struck me as kind of a throw off as far as like, people's personal top 5. I'll tell you this, a lot of people featured a Nintendo game. And it's funny because from a personal point of view, and part of my top 5 kind of reflects this, I wasn't a big Nintendo person, and even to this day, I'm still not a big Nintendo person. But that's not a knock against Nintendo, and shout outs to them. You know, I appreciate them rocking and whatnot, but I'm not a Nintendo person. I'm sorry. I grew up on the opposite end. When it was Nintendo versus Sega, I was Sega. When it was Nintendo versus Sony, I was Sony. You know, it's just what it was. Yes, I do have a Wii. Yes, DSs and whatnot, but it's not like I invest a lot of time into those. You know, I really put a lot of time on my PlayStation, on my Genesis, and my Sega Saturns, and everything else but Nintendo. Not saying I didn't play any Nintendo games at all. I did play some Zeldas amongst others, old school. Did play a lot of new school stuff on the Wii as well. But it wasn't like it was my primary console or games of choice, just to be honest with you. Just keeping it in the buck. But for a lot of other people, it was definitely that. It was definitely a lot of Nintendo call outs on there. Old school Nintendo titles, some semi old Nintendo titles that people ain't even thought of in a while, which I was like, okay, I was pulling some out of the crates. And that was the other thing I'll tell you. A lot of people pull some games out of the crates. I really have to kind of like sit there and think about and break down. And so I was like, wow, this is a very, very interesting topic of conversation. And so I was like, dog, I kind of had all this data, and I still got people throwing me their top fives and stuff even on the fly. And so I'm going to actually keep piling in on these topics of conversation. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to give you my personal top five. That's first and foremost. For the people who want to know what my personal top five is, I will definitely give you my personal top five. The second part of that equation is I'm going to actually break down a lot of my people's top five. And I'm actually going to analyze them and say, look, I'm going to make a case for the top fives that they have in their mix. So, you know, even if I don't necessarily agree, and I'm gonna tell you the goodness and the bads about it. Y'all know how True Indeed gets down. I'm not gonna sit there and sugarcoat my thoughts and opinions about the game. If it's dope, it's dope. And if it's not dope, I make a case for why I can see why you put it on there, but it may not be the reason why I put it on there. But that's what we're gonna break down too. So we're gonna break it down twofold. But I am gonna get into my personal top five. I am gonna jump into a couple of other people's top five. And so that's the topic of conversation. We're going to do this in segments. I'm going to keep it 100. I'm going to do it in a bunch of segments. So one segment will have a top five, and I'm going to feature each person's top five that I can as I go along. The more that y'all participate in it, the more top fives I will be able to break down and evaluate. So if you want to get into this conversation and you want to get into this YouTube stream, trust me. Get into the comment page, get into my Twitter feed, get your hands on me as best you can so y'all can say true. I need to know about this. I need to give you my top five because I want you to break it down and analyze it, you know, and I'm going to break down your top five too. If y'all don't like my top five, hey, so it be. I'm not even mad at you. That's the whole thing about the topic of conversation is I know a lot of people aren't even going to remotely like my top five. I guarantee they were like, huh? What? But I guarantee you're going to like the conversation. That's what I can guarantee. So that's what we're doing today. So from that point, we're going to actually jump into it. So this is how we do. This is Holy Circle. This is Holy Circle Gaming. My name is True Indeed, and we're going to present to you. All right, y'all. Let's go ahead and get into it. My True Indeed's top five personal games of all time. Y'all ready for it? Y'all ready for it? I hope you are, because I think y'all going to be a little bit surprised at what I'm going to tell you. But before I get into my personal top five, let me go ahead and give you this. Let me give you a few honorable mentions to the top five. Y'all ready? Roll clip. One of the honorable mentions right here is going to be Need for Speed. And the reason why I mention Need for Speed is because I've been playing that game since Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed. Old school Need for Speed. A lot of people are used to the new schools with Carbon and Most Wanted, and then the new Need for Speed, which were all dope. and in conjunction with the other Need for Speeds that were mixed into it. There was a lot of Need for Speeds, and at one point in time, they were just banging them out left after right, left and right. But definitely love the Need for Speed franchise. It was a great game. Not to say that it was too arcadey or too realistic. It was actually a very good blend of both. And because it was a very good blend of both, it made it really fun and engaging and really an exciting game to play. If you never played Need for Speed, it would definitely be one of those games you definitely want to get your hands on if you definitely love driving games. I will personally recommend Carbon or Most Wanted. If you want to go with more of the story aspect of it, I like some of the cars, the customizations, just kind of the feel. If you like Fast and the Furious, the movie, they took a lot of elements out of Fast and the Furious based upon what they saw in the Need for Speed franchise. So that's, if you ever want to know kind of where they got that concept from, they really got their concept from looking at it from the game's point of view. And so if you see the game, like if you saw Carbon, and if you saw some of the Need for Speed, if you saw Carbon, and if you saw some of the Fast and Furious movies, you're going to see a lot of parallels in cars, a lot of parallels in even how the races transpired. So definitely a great honorable mention. One of those games that it was very close to getting into my top 5, but I really just couldn't pop it into my top 5. But it's definitely one of them that definitely deserves an honorable mention. Shout outs to EA, shout outs to shout out to Frostbite, shout out to Criterion, and every other team that actually had their hands in making the Need for Speed franchise special. Shout out to them. Definitely a great game. Get your hands on that. Definitely an honorable mention for sure. So one of those games you definitely should check out. So that's one of them. Let's go into the next one. Roll clip. Next game I'm gonna mention, old school game, Final Fight. Now, you know, if y'all not familiar with Final Fight, you could get 3 characters, some big old burly dude, this white boy named Guy, and I forgot the other guy. It was 3 characters that you could pick. The reason why I picked Final Fight, and as crazy as it sounds, it's the one game when I was in college where me and my boy Steve-O, shout out to Steve-O, when we used to sit in the dorm room every night right before we go to bed, and we would get our game on. We would actually play that game on the Sega Genesis until we beat the game. Now we'll sit there, and we got it to the point where we were dialing that game in within an hour. We would just go through, you know, maybe a couple of live changeovers, and we would actually bang through Final Fight. And it was funny because when I thought about it as an honorable mention, it was a great game because it kind of had that premise of Double Dragon, but had a little bit more art detail to it. The story was okay, but being able to use the weapons was really, really cool. Being able to hit people with the lead pipe and be able to like power bomb people and stuff. It was a great game. It was very fun, a very good multiplayer game. I know a lot of people played it in the arcade, but I actually was one who actually played it on the Sega Genesis as opposed to the arcade, and invested a lot of time. That was like my college game of choice for a long period of time. You know, believe it or not, this is above Street Fighter and above some other games like Mortal Kombat at that time. It was really, for my boys, one of those games where we played in college was Final Fight. So shout out to my squad, ESD, shout out to them. Shout out to my boy Steve-O, because we was the ones who would actually mash and dash and play that game consistently every single night before we would go to bed and get up, you know, get to our classes and stuff, and, you know, do our thing and come back home, you know, to the dorms and do it all over again. So it was definitely fun. It was just, I just remember the experience and the fun that I had, you know, having the boys come in the dorm room and everybody's watching us play and trying to mash through and get it on one pass without having to take a continue or whatever. So we were to the point where we were playing like that, and it was funny because I had my other boys, you know, Chris and the boys across, and they were on the other side, and then they were playing NHL and some of those other games that was really dope too on the Sega Genesis, because we were the only two people in our dorm room, that actually had, consoles in our dorm room with TVs where we were actually getting our game on, and we would do it late night. So half the people were in one room, half of us was in the other room, and we were definitely getting our game on, and the game of choice was Final Fight. So definitely had to be an honorable mention for sure. Here's the next one. Next clip up, that was going to be Columns. Now, y'all saying, wow, see, honorable mention, Columns, really true? Is this really how y'all getting down? Yeah, man, because don't get it wrong, it was really one of the first puzzle games, like the drop three Tetris style, because it was basically a combination of both. If you are unfamiliar with Columns, look into it. Another one of those classic Sega Genesis games where it kind of had the technique of Tetris, where you have to kind of slide your column of three down into a row, but you also had to match 3 and 4 and 5 gems in order to make the gems disappear and fall into place. So I actually combined both skills together. So you actually had to learn how to drop the gems into the right column, and you also had to learn how to match up the gems to make 3, 4, and 5, so you could get these special gems that would actually explode and actually get your score up. And then you could actually play this game either solo, or you could play it side by side, where you could have a secondary person try to match scores. So whoever would last longer would have the better of the two scores, obviously, or whoever was making the better combination would have the better of the two scores. It had a time limit on certain aspects of it, but it was one of the very first puzzle games that I actually got down on, which actually spurred me to play some of the newer puzzle games like Gems of War amongst others. But it was Columns was the first one that actually got me to the puzzle game. So I have to give a shout out to Sega and dropping that game out there. Here's a quick story about it though. Back in the day, me and my mom, we were at a mall. It was the Lakewood Mall out in Lakewood, California, and it was way back in the day, and we were just kind of walking through and stuff, and in the middle of the mall they had a big old huge setup, and I couldn't really tell what was going on at first, but they had, the Sonic the Hedgehog and stuff, and they were bouncing around, so I was like, oh, word, they actually have like a Sega out and about, and they're actually in the middle of our mall, because they never come out to our area. It's a rarity when they were actually coming out in our area at this time. Now, keep in mind, this is probably like, I want to say like 89, 90, somewhere in that area, maybe somewhere in that area, 90, 91, somewhere in that area. And we were just walking through, and we were actually getting we were actually trying to get some clothes or whatnot, and we had saw that they had this event, so I had to check it out. I'm a young gamer, Sega's in the building, I had to see what was going on. They had the dude on the mic and hooting and hollering and stuff, and then they said, we're going to have a competition, but it requires your mom or a parent and a kid to play together, and whoever gets the highest score is going to win this competition. So I was like, cool, I'm down, but my mom, who is not a gamer whatsoever, has to participate too. And so I was like, Mom, I really want to play. I'm giving her the sob story. I'm like, Mom, this is Sega. I want to play. I want to get my game on. I want to play Kala. I want to play. I want to get a chance to win. And so what happened was, we're talking with my mom. She's like, all right, cool, because that's how my mom is, and me or my sister really wanted to do something, and she had the time or whatnot, or the resources, she was down to support us in whatever we did. So shout out to my mom for that. And so we got in there and we got our game on. So I'm sitting there trying to play Columns. This was my very first experience in Columns, was actually playing it in competition in front of other people to try to win basically the regional championships to get a chance to go to the world championships. I didn't even know it at the time, but that's what it was. It was a chance to play for the regional championships, to go to the world championships with me and my mom combined, because it was basically a, parent and kid competition that was going on. So I'm trying to walk my mom through, and I'm kind of playing it blindly because I didn't know all the ins and outs of the game, but I'm trying to walk my mom through to get her to play. And so she's trying. She got the controller in her hand. She really don't know what she's doing, but she's trying the best that she can, and she put up a solid score. And I put up a pretty good score considering I was young. I wasn't initiated in the gaming front, and actually put up a really good score too. Now, granted, it wasn't enough to win, but it was the experience of having the chance to play with my mom. That's probably one of the rarest times where me and my mom actually sat there and played a game together and actually had an enjoyable time in the process. Now, I have a t-shirt, I don't have it in front of me, but there's the Sega World Championships t-shirt that I still have to this day. It's a really like a kid's medium, super duper small, but it has the Sonic the Hedgehog logo on it, has the Sega World Championships on it. It was dope. One of those shirts that I would definitely keep. I'm not going to bring it out right now, but it's one of those ones that I really cherish, because not for anything else, not for the fact that it was Sega in the building, but more so it was an opportunity to play with my mom. And anytime you have a chance to get your game on, like if you're a kid, if you have a chance to get your game on with your parents, or or if a parent want to get their game on with their kid, it's one of the most enjoyable experiences that you can have. Something that I try to instill with my kids as well. And so that was the reason why I had to put Columns on the list. More importantly for anything else was because it was my mom that I had the chance to play with, and we actually took the time to play it, had a good time, and a very enjoyable experience. And for that, Columns is on my honorable mention list for sure. Next. On the list now, Kingdom Hearts. Don't get it fooled for a second when it comes to action RPGs. Dog, like I said, it was so close to getting into the top 5. It's just, I had a tough choice between the title that I put in the top 5 and 2 other RPGs, and Kingdom Hearts was one of them. Love the concept of what they did with Kingdom Hearts, even though it took me a minute to get used to it. Disney characters, Square Enix, the Square characters from Final Fantasy, bridging those two together for them to have an action RPG to save the princesses of the Disney princesses. Definitely dope way to convey a game to actually bridge the two together. So if you ever want to get non-gamers or people who are like, oh, I'm not sure about gaming and stuff, to kind of bridge the gap between that and get your hardcore players to play, get that Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts, top to bottom, 1, 2, Birth by Sleep, 365, all of them. Fantastic game. And a lot of it had to do with the storytelling. The gameplay mechanics was, it was tough, but it was fair and it was rewarding. It was a very good structure of a game. It wasn't over the top where it was too long, but it wasn't too short, so you actually had a chance to get into it. I remember having my kids sitting on the sidelines watching the game being played, and just them like watching it like it's a cartoon, and then saying, hey, daddy, do this, daddy, do that, because they saw the different things that they could relate to from a Disney perspective. Because one of the things that I really liked about Kingdom Hearts was that, even if you wasn't a Disney fan, it actually took you into just about most of the worlds of Disney that you could possibly be. Bastion, and the Pride Lands for Lion King, Under the Sea with like Ariel and all of them. It took you into a lot of the Disney world and actually gave you a solid experience, especially like the Tigger and Pooh. That one was kind of dope, even though, yeah, I know these are all kid stuff, but it actually made a good bridge between the two. But it also told a good story just the same with Sora and Kyrie and Roxas. It actually told a very good story in between those two. And so bridging all that together, saving the hearts, it was a very great game, and it was so close to getting into my top 5. I mean, really close, because there was a lot of time invested. Everybody in the household played, Kingdom Hearts. A lot of my friends and, friends and family, they played Kingdom Hearts. Definitely a great game. I can't say nothing bad about that game because I thought it was a very good balance. But most importantly, it was one of those games for me personally. The reason why that is definitely getting an honorable mention is because my kids love that game an awful lot. I remember my son Q, when he was old enough, he got in there and knocked around and tried to play through it, and he actually banged through and played through Kingdom Hearts very well too. So shout out to them, shout out to the squad holding down Kingdom Hearts. Great game. I just thought that, it was just one of those games that was so fun. It was so engaging. I remember getting the special edition strategy guides for it. I actually bought the soundtrack on CD because the music behind it was really great. From the J-pop variations of it, to just the orchestral fanfare, a very great soundtrack. The sound engineering was great on it. They actually recreated everything well, and even the remixes. If you get a chance to play it on the P3 or the P4 or the X, if you get a chance to play it on any one of those, definitely do. Definitely get your chance to play Kingdom Hearts. If you like RPGs, if you like the balance of Disney characters, even if you like Square games just in general, you definitely want to get your hands on Kingdom Hearts. And definitely, I tell you what, I'm definitely looking forward to Kingdom Hearts 3, looking for them to expand the story, to see what they're going to definitely do with it. So we'll see as we go along. But definitely honorable mention. I have to mention Kingdom Hearts for sure. No question whatsoever. Has to be, an honorable mention for sure, because it was so close to getting in the top 5. And I know that this game is featured in the top 5, and I'll probably break it down more of why it should be in most people's top 5, and it's probably not. But I had to put this game in the honorable mention. It will actually probably be like number 6, to be honest with you. It'll be tossed between that one and Need for Speed as far as like the 6th spot. But it definitely was one of the closest games to put into my top 5, because it was a game that was a lot of time invested into it, a lot of effort invested into it. I got figurines for it. Trust me. Yes, Kingdom Hearts, definitely no question. Honorable mention, no doubt. So there you have it, the honorable mentions of the top 5. So in the next clip, what you're going to see is what made the top 5. True Indeed's top 5. So for Holy Circle Gaming, till the next clip, you know how we do. God above everything.